For me, it's all about productivity. Are you productive in your work? And if I've given you a task to do, it's pretty obvious if you have done that task. Now, if it's a really big project, if it's build my website, that's a much harder thing to gauge. And so you would want updates. So for me, every day I ask my team to give me a daily update, a daily report. And I ask for 3 things in this, and I only get one of them. I ask you to answer 3 questions. What did you do today, or what did you work on today? What problems did you run into, and what can I do to help you?
Pilates business owners, welcome to the Pilates Business Podcast, brought to you by the people who own, operate and instruct in a successful clinical Pilates studio in Australia. Our mission is to help you to discover Pilates business assets to build your clinical Pilates business success. And now, here is your host, David Gunther.
Ever worried about how truly you will know if the remote staff are doing the work without staring over their shoulder? In our latest episode, we uncover why trust is the first brick in the building of loyal long-term hires. Today we turn that trust into practice. How to keep people accountable without surveillance, by giving clear directions without drowning in SOPs, and designing a lead up to any subsequent interviews that will actually reveal the right fit for both the business and the remote contractor. John Jonas joins us again to show us how to manage by measuring productivity and not by monitoring attendance. Let's dive in.
Almost everybody you find is going to have a college degree, and that's that. It's a post-high school 3 or 4 year college degree, and that's the reality of the Philippines education system. They are very well educated. That's all I have to say.
And that's just good for us to know. And the accountability aspect is important, and being able to create that trust, because initially you don't trust them, they don't trust you, and that's just natural. What's going to happen here? This is a new situation. But what ideally is the accountability side of things? How does that work with smaller businesses in particular, who are perhaps a little bit more concerned about that than they should be, but perhaps not?
Yeah. So I have 2 ways to deal with accountability: the way that I do it and the way that I have provided for you to do it if you want to. For me, it's all about productivity. Are you productive in your work? And if I've given you a task to do, it's pretty obvious if you have done that task. Now, if it's a really big project, if it's build my website, that's a much harder thing to gauge. And so you would want updates. So for me, every day I ask my team to give me a daily update, a daily report. And I ask for 3 things in this, and I only get one of them. I ask you to answer 3 questions. What did you do today, or what did you work on today? What problems did you run into, and what can I do to help you? Now, I get the answer to what did you do today every day. I rarely get what problems did you run into, but I do get it. And what can I do to help you doesn't come very often, which is fine. Because really, I just want to know what they did today. And if they're lying to me on that, it's pretty obvious. Like, deliverables aren't happening. And if deliverables aren't happening, there's something else going on. Typically, they're not out to scam you. That's not the Philippines culture. If they got a job and they like their job, then they want to keep that job. They don't want to screw you over. They don't want to steal your stuff. That's not the Philippines culture. So if something isn't happening, chances are really high that something is wrong with them. They don't understand the instructions. They're not comfortable with it. They hate it. They are missing a piece. Something isn't as clear as you think it is. So when you talk about accountability, typically for me, it's, are you being productive? If I see that you're not being productive, I'm going to say why. Like, hey, I noticed you're not being very productive. Why? What's going on? You say you're working for 8 hours, but you're not getting very much done. What's going on here? And that almost always solves it. So the other side of this could be time tracking. And this is the way that I've provided for you, as I said, I provided this for you. I don't use it. So at Online Jobs, we have a time tracker. It's called Time Proof. And they install it on their computer, and it connects to your Online Jobs account. And when they're working, they click start, and it tracks their time, and it takes screenshots randomly of their screen to see what they're working on. And I don't like this because it's immediately you saying, I don't trust you. Like, it's taking screenshots of their computer and tracking their time, which almost nobody in the US works this way. Certainly nobody works with a screenshot tracker. And so for you to start your relationship with them by saying, yeah, I'm going to track your time with this time tracker, it says, yeah, I don't trust you. And then like their reaction to you don't trust me is, well, I don't trust you even more. And it's just not a good way to do it. However, we do have a lot of people doing it. And if that's the way you want to hold your people accountable by doing screenshot time tracking, it works, kind of.
Well, I really agree with what you said there about breaking the bigger tasks into smaller tasks and smaller deliverables, and being able to have a report on that from your worker on a daily basis. So with some of the work that we do, we can plan ahead what we're going to do in the day. So with that sort of work, which is marketing project work, we're currently asking for a plan of what they might do today. And it does include, for example, what is it that we need to do on our side, or specifically me usually. I'm usually the blockage there, John, in terms of getting projects to conclusion or publication and all of that sort of thing, because I'm busy with various other things. What is it that I need to do that will allow you to get to that next step? So knowing what those deliverables are and what those little bits that make up the big project are is really important, and then getting a plan on that so that you can know whether it has been delivered or not, and then getting the report at the end of the day as to what has been achieved, and identifying issues, problems, perhaps often not how you solve a problem, it's perhaps who, because if you know how to solve the problem, then you are the who. You can get that done. But if you don't know how to solve the problem, if you're a worker and you're not able to find that out relatively easily, and there's a lot of information online, obviously these days, so that people can learn processes and tasks very quickly. And this is another thing. What do you think of standard operating procedures and that sort of approach there, and being able to get details in writing and video about how to do things?
Do you want my honest answer about this? Or do you want me to?
I'd like your honest answer on it.
I think SOPs are stupid. Look, it's not that they're stupid. They're great if you have them. But I see too many people who don't move their business forward because they don't have SOPs, standard operating procedures, because it's such a burden to create them. And so, yeah, like the business gurus who are writing about this, it sounds so cool. People love to read about it and so they sell books. But the reality is, in my business every day, creating an SOP is really hard, and I don't want to do it. And then the bigger reality is that if I create an SOP for an unknown human to read, and then when they go through it, they have different assumptions than I had, and I leave out things that I know that they have no clue about, and then I'll talk about things that are like super obvious to them because they already know, and I just wasted tons of time. What I find is when I hire someone, then I give the instructions that I think I give the minimum, it's the MVP, the minimum viable product of instructions that I think will get them going. And then they try it and they come back and are like, yeah, I don't understand this piece. And then I explain that piece. And then I know I'm explaining something valuable rather than, SOPs is, I think it's such a waste of time, but so many people focus on it because the gurus talk about it and nobody does it. It's not that nobody does it, but it's really hard. And it's not a bad thing if you can do it.
Let me come back at you on that, John. That I think that's really valuable, your approach there. And I think it depends very much on the clues in the name, standard operating procedures. It's not that you make them standard. It's if they are standard operating procedures, things that you're going to do the same way every time, each time that situation comes up, and it's not going to vary very much at all. So in that case, yeah, they're worthwhile. And look, a good example of that is, our client service coordination with things like somebody wants to suspend their membership, John. And okay, so where do we find the standard templates for that to respond to that? And what do we do on the scheduling system? Those sort of things are standard. When we're talking about let's build a campaign to outreach through our clientele that's going to help us with referral, well, that's a creative task, right? That's a different thing. And of course, there's ways of doing that, and there's all sorts of varieties of approaches. And that's where I think, your approach there is very valuable. But look, I do think there are times for standard operating procedures when it's a standard operation. There are ways of doing that make it fairly quick. But I also agree with you, it can really stop people in their tracks, stop a business in its tracks, because it's another excuse for why you don't progress with things, that you just don't get things done. So we'll leave that discussion for more on that discussion, perhaps for another day, about standard operating procedures in particular. But yeah, the time tracking, I'm not so sure on that. There needs to be some sort of reporting, but spying on somebody's computer is not the best. Trust is the game, and building trust. What are some ways that you really build trust besides the things that we've already talked about, making sure they get trained, there's good communication?
That's it. You treat people well, you communicate with them, you don't ignore them, you don't yell at them. These are basic managerial principles that are just extra important in the Philippines.
Yep. And extra important when you've got that distance between you as well. You're not in the same room as these people, and they're not in your room either. It's hard for you to get knowledge of each other that is more intimate in terms of that communication. So, you've got to be very careful.
Yeah, which, let me add to that, a video interview is the wrong thing to do. That is, until you have gained their trust, they don't want to do a video interview with you because they don't trust you. And so the video interview will ensure that you lose good quality candidates. Rather than doing a video interview, do it through email first.
Let's drill down on that a little bit. What is it that they don't trust about that? Because I would be a perpetrator of that mistake, John. I would go, okay, sure, there'll be emails to start with, but then, one of the things is, well, send us a video of you talking about these points to show us that you can do this work, that you understand what we're trying to get you to do.
Help the team at the Pilates Business Podcast keep improving and delivering this important information. Follow the show on your favourite podcast platform and recommend it to other Clinical Pilates business owners.
If their work is going to be video-based or if it's going to be phone-based, then you got to do it. But if their work is data entry or scheduling, there's nothing video about that, right?
Right.
And so what I find is that I want to interview people the same way that I'm going to interact with them. And I'm not going to get on video meetings with people every day. I'm going to communicate with people through email or through our Basecamp project manager system or through chat. And so why would I interview someone differently? And there are some reasons. So the trust that you're talking about, they don't want to lose face. And they fear that if they get on this video interview with you, you may not understand them. They fear that you might talk down to their accent. They know that they're going to understand you because they watch American TV and American movies, but they fear that something is going to go wrong. And so what will happen is you have 10 candidates. You're going to try and schedule an interview with all 10 of them. 5 of them won't respond to you anymore. You just lost 5 potential good candidates. Of the other 5 of them will schedule with you. 2 of them will show up. 3 of them won't even show up because of the consequences of this interview. And then you're left with 2 people who may or may not have been the best people for the job, but they were the most confident at doing a video interview.
Yep.
Right? So I think it's acceptable to ask people to, hey, use your cell phone and record me a video talking about this. I think that's pretty common. And you can do the video interview, but if you're going to do it, it's like the 6th step in the interview process. It's at the very end, once you've already gained some of their trust because you've communicated with them a bunch of times.
And you've set the groundwork in place. You've made sure that you as the employer, as the person who's going to employ this contractor, understands what you're going to be asking them to do and how that's going to be valued, how that's going to be assessed, and how that's going to be accountable. And getting that in writing is really, really important, and even more important with what you've said in terms of creating that trust element and setting the stage so that if they do progress, because they might self-select out just based on that, which is a good thing for you, right? Because you don't want people in there that aren't going to be able to perform in that same circumstance there that you've described in writing. And so the people that do come through that process to the point where you may or may not have an interview on video at some point later down in the process, those people are going to be the people that you want to be talking to, not wasting your time or wasting their time, and giving you the best number of those people to choose from. I've found, John, the problem often is selecting between a number of really good people, all of whom are going to do a great job for you, but who do you choose? Because how do you decide that someone is going to be that much better for you in the short, medium, long term when they're all presenting as excellent candidates? That is one of the things that we find. We get to the point where people are really keen to do the work. We've described the work very well and what the situation is and what we're trying to achieve. And we've matched with people that are able to deliver those things.
So what I do, so I'm just going to describe my recruiting process really quickly. And I go into this in way more detail at onevaaway.com. Of the people who respond to my job post, if they have followed my instructions in the job post, then I'm going to ask them 2, 3, 4 questions across 5, 6, 10 emails. And the purpose of this, there are 3 purposes. 1, to see if they answer all my questions, to find out how detail-oriented they are. If they only answer 3 of 4 questions, then the chances of them only doing 3 of 4 tasks that I assign is high, and that doesn't work for me. 2, I want to know how quickly they respond. This is a virtual relationship. I'm never going to see you in person. Does it take you 3 days to respond? Because if it does, that doesn't work for me. And that doesn't work for me once we've started working. And if it takes that 3 days to respond in the interview process, it's going to do the same thing later. And 3, I want to know, and this is the most important piece, I want to know, am I excited to get an email from you? Or am I dreading it? Because we're going to work together for a long time, hopefully. I mean, I told you, the first person I ever hired still works for me. And people that I hired in 2007 and 2008 and 2010 all still work for me. And so if during the interview process, I'm not excited about hearing from you, then I'm not going to hire you. It's the wrong person. Because the goal here isn't to hire the best person. There is no best person. There's always someone who could be better. The goal is to find the best available person who fits. And that fit is a really big deal. And so the way we communicate has to do with my personality and your personality. And if our communication isn't working during the interview process, that's a really good indicator that you're not going to do the job as I would hope. We're not going to communicate well as when there's a problem. So to me, I'm going to do this over and over and over again because I find I'm going to send the email over and over and over again, asking different questions. Because I find that getting them to answer a bunch of questions gives me a really good idea of our personality fit. It also allows me to be lazy in the recruiting process, which is really great because it only takes me 20 seconds to send an email with a bunch of questions, especially when I'm copying and pasting the same questions. And it puts the onus on them to prove to me why I should hire them. And I get to see, oh yeah, I don't like your personality. Yes, I do like your personality. And usually, like you said before, I'll end up with 3 or 4 people that I really like. And then I have a harder time choosing from there. But then that's when, like, how much are you asking to make comes into it. How much do I think your skills are actually there? I'll do a test task often, where if it's going to take longer than 30 minutes, I'll pay for it. And that test task, again, is to see how well do we work together, not necessarily who does the task the best. So when you're talking about, like, do you find people who fit? That's what I'm looking for, more than what skills do you have, because you're not hiring a skill, you're hiring a human with a personality. I'm looking for how well do we fit together? How well do we work together?
So today we've seen how managing remote staff isn't about screen trackers or endless SOPs. It's about daily deliverables, clear communication, and hiring for the right fit. When you trust first and build accountability into the rhythm of work, you create a team that grows with your studio. Join me next week for the final episode of Series 10, Remote Teams for Pilates Studios. We'll wrap it all together and show you how to future-proof your business with a remote team that will last the distance for your Pilates studio business. And until then, stay awesome.
You have been listening to the Pilates Business Podcast with David Gunther. If you are enjoying the show, let us know by subscribing and leaving a review. For more information, or if you have any Pilates business questions, visit www.pilatesbusiness.com.au.